Hello, my name is Andrew Fake from Minds and Money. Delighted to be joined today by Ian Harris, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer of Libero Copper. Delighted to have you with us today, Ian.
Good morning and saludos from Medellin, Colombia.
Great to go and hear from you. For those who haven't heard too much about your company, can you give us a brief overview?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the company is we have three significant copper assets, all in the Americas, in British Columbia, Canada, in Putumayo, Colombia, and in San Juan, Argentina. The flagship is the Mocoa resource, which has over 2 million tons of copper contained, but all a very impressive suite of strategic porphyries.
And of course, you've got a great management team. Before we dive into the rest of your management team, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So the reason I joined Libero was I was previously Senior VP and Country Manager for Corriente Resources, which is the Mirador project in Ecuador. We took that project all the way through sale, and then I stayed on board as a part of the sales agreement for 1 year and took that project into construction. And it went on to be the first industrial scale mine in the history of Ecuador, obviously a copper project also. And it's in the same Jurassic porphyry belt as the Mocoa project in Colombia. So it was really understanding, kind of developing over time. And in Ecuador, it was through a heavy beating until it got through the thick skull. The way to advance projects in the Americas and coming up with a formula to get that done. And here was the chance with the Mocoa project to start with a clean slate and take all those lessons learned and move a project forward. And probably add Ernie Mast, who's one of our directors, did something very similar in Panama at Cobre Panama. He was the CEO of Cobre Panama with Inmet, took it all the way through to permitting, where First Quantum went on to build that project. So really the two closest copper projects, not really, the two closest copper projects to Mocoa that are operating were part of this team. And so we look at things differently as a developer, how to develop projects and actually can become mines. So I'm very proud to be part of a team that has a successful track record, not just discovery, but actually getting mines into production. I think it's a major difference between Libero and many other companies.
That's a really great, overview of yourself and some of the key players in your management team. I'd now like to dig a little bit deeper into some of these projects. Can you tell us about, some of these key projects and highlight some potential upcoming news that could be of interest to shareholders and investors who are tuning in?
Sure. I think what's most important and for time is the Colombian project Mocoa. It's already got 2 million tons of contained copper. It's open in all directions. We've identified additional targets within the project area because the Jurassic porphyry is famous for having this cluster style deposits around it. And it's already big. I mean, 2 million tons of copper is a significant resource. It's one of the larger undeveloped resources in the world. But I think alluding to those lessons learned is we are doing the work and applying that formula to ensure that this project moves forward on a sustainable basis. And it's been very exciting in Colombia. We went through elections in August, but there's a super key focus in Colombia to move towards sustainable energy and the energy transition. And it's not just how power is generated, but 60% of the exports currently in Ecuador are oil and coal. So it's really establishing a new industry, and we working in partnership on how to help create a new industry within Colombia because it's going to need it, right? And I think that's what, and it's hard to always articulate that in news releases, but that's been the massive amount of work that's been going on, and exciting to see that it's being incorporated into the National Development Plan, the Just Energy Transition Plan, reindustrialization plan of the country right now, focusing on building a production chain off of copper. And since we are one of the largest, most significant copper deposits in the country and one of the most advanced, it's going to be the backbone of what these types of projects can do. They can actually develop countries and be a big part of the economies and developing a new green energy industry within the country.
Um, so far, we've been sort of like talking about Libero Copper and the copper deposits that you have. But I think what's really interesting about your company is that you're also involved in molybdenum as well. A two-part question, just for our investors who may not be too sure as to what is molybdenum and why is it important? Why is it important? And secondly, can you tell us a little bit about how Libero Copper is involved in molybdenum?
So first, I want to say that Colombia is also very excited about it because molybdenum, sorry, I almost switched into Spanish there, is used in high strength, lightweight steel. And Colombia does have a steel industry, and it's currently importing moly. And in the Mocoa deposit, and again, still growing, contains 232,000 tons of moly. And to put that in perspective, world production, I think it was 2001, was about 279,000 tons. So it's almost a world's production in one deposit. So it tells you it would convert Colombia, I think, if it went to a big scale, it could be one of the largest producers, like top 5 producers of moly in the world. And on top of that, the resource was estimated on a $10 per pound moly price. And I think last time I looked, it was about $36 a pound. Because its growth is about 4% per year, because it's used so much in high technology, wind turbines, blades of wind turbines also. It's used more and more as we're going through higher and higher technologies. Its demand becomes higher, higher, and higher. And it normally comes from copper mines, but the grade of copper mines continue to go down, and they really can't. It's not easy for them to turn on their moly circuit. So it's very exciting, the amount of moly that's contained within the project. It's by far one of the world's largest undeveloped moly deposits in the world.
We've talked a little bit about Colombia. We've certainly at Mines and Money seen an increase in the number of mining companies that have projects from Colombia attending our events over the last 12 to 18 months. Some people have a preconceived notion about Colombia as a mining jurisdiction. How have you found the government to work with, and what is Colombia like as a mining jurisdiction?
So I want to go backwards again, right? And working 6 years in Ecuador with a new president. And in that case, it was a new constitution, a suspension of all mining in the country, a new mining law. And still, the Mocoa project went out on the other end and became the first industrial scale project in the world. And I remember back then, the mine minister getting in those early discussions saying, I really care about 3 projects: Fruta del Norte, Mirador, and Maritza. And today, those all became billion-dollar companies, especially $1 billion on today's, if you apply a little bit of inflation, right, in terms of valuations. So what does that tell you? It tells you getting government support and building government support for your project is critical. And so I think that's what's most exciting about Colombia, at least in the strategic metals, especially copper, right? That is what the government is focused on, because they want to move towards green energy. They know they need to transition away, whether by policy or because world demand is shifting, but a new industry needs to be created. And so there's groundswell. And then the other is, what did we learn in Panama? What did we learn in Ecuador? And also, I can also say in Venezuela and Bolivia and Chile and Argentina, is that you have to build real relationships with your local communities. In the case of Mocoa, 85% of the workforce is from the local area, including 60% of the professionals. 60% of the professionals are women. We've created over 100 jobs and over 330 jobs with local contractors. We take it down to the ground and build real relationships, not just buying in the local supermarket, but building the first pair of steel-toed boots in the community. Those are the level we take it, and those are the type of relationships we develop. We see a very long-term approach, and really, it's why I'm in Colombia currently. I'm fluent in Spanish because it's such a critical component. If you really want to build a mine, not just put out nice drill results, but if you really want a project to become a mine, you have to create this long-term sustainable base, which is strength locally, building strong relationships, reputation nationally, just demonstrating leadership nationally, and I won't. And that is what, at the end of the day, creates political will and drives political will, and that's what we've done. And I think we're very proud of the way that the project has been positioned and is becoming a part of the national strategy.
Changing tact, who are your main shareholders?
One of our key shareholders, it's a mixed bag, but the biggest shareholder is Anglo-Asian, which is a London-listed mining company with assets in Azerbaijan. And I've worked with them before. I used to be CEO of a company in Saudi Arabia, and I've never been more impressed by the technical knowledge and strategy of this company, right? If you can build projects there, then I know that they would understand South America. But it was really that depth of knowledge technically, and so that's what they really bring to the table. While we're focused on project development and exploration, they bring in the metallurgists and the mine planners and the other aspects to look at the projects differently and be able to do a lot of things that other companies can't do internally, because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the long term. How does this project become a mine, and creating that pathway? And so having that depth of knowledge with Anglo-Asian has been wonderful.
Mm-hmm. If I'm trying to work out what makes you stand out from your peers, you've mentioned a few specific things during the course of this interview. You've mentioned your experience of your management team. You've mentioned the deposits that you have. You've mentioned as to how you go and work with governments both at the national and the local level. You've mentioned your shareholders as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight that sort of differentiates you from your peer group?
I think the biggest one is an experience in getting projects across the finish line that eventually become mines. We have a developer mentality, and we have an asset that's already been geologically de-risked, and we know this game plan. We've seen this story before, and we're doing that job to make sure that this project moves on and has a high probability. And I don't think that is the story that you're going to see with many other companies. We have real assets. We have a significant team. And we're doing the right things to create significant value for our shareholders.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Ian. That was Ian Harris, President and Chief Executive Officer of Libero Copper, brought to you by Mines Money TV in association with Redcloud. Thank you very much for your time today, Ian.
Thanks a ton, Andrew. Nice to see you again.